Welcome back to episode 2 of 2 with James Dewar, Berkshire Bitcoiners and Bridge to Bitcoin. Hopefully you listened last week to the first episode. If you didn't, skip back. It's an incredibly informative episode on what cryptocurrency is, why cryptocurrency is here, and how it is set to potentially change the lives of everybody who lives across the world. So without further ado, let's get back into part 2 with James.
Just going back to the start of everything, James. So I want to know more about you and your journey into it. Because I think our listeners out there, they probably don't know much about Bitcoin, or probably what they've read is completely inaccurate, because people assume that it's something different, like we spoke about at the beginning. But what got you into Bitcoin? What was the light bulb sort of moment for you? And do you have any regrets at all from your journey of getting into it at the start to where you are now?
I'll start with the regret that I didn't find it earlier. But that's true for everybody. Literally everybody who gets into Bitcoin goes, why didn't I do this earlier?
Well, it's like I said, every year you look at it and go, I missed the boat. And you keep missing the boat every single year until you just jump on, don't you?
Yeah. But my background, so I spent 20 years in financial services. So I worked for Prudential, M&G. Started in Reading, ended up spending most of my time in London. I ended up running finance systems, so I had one foot in IT and one foot in finance. And as I mentioned, I think already, I'm an accountant by profession. I got opportunity in 2020 during COVID, but it wasn't linked to COVID. It had been on the cards after some big restructuring going on for the prior 2 or 3 years in Prudential and M&G, to take a package, I guess you could say, kind of early retirement package. I mean, it was very early. I mean, I was 51 at the time. And I was in a DB scheme, final salary, defined benefit pension. So I thought, because I'd never really meant to work for them. In fact, I'd never really meant to be an accountant. It all kind of just happened as a flow.
25 years later.
It was literally like, I honestly, I went along in 1999 for a day's temping at Prudential in Reading.
And they just locked the doors?
Basically, right? And I was photocopying. I'd gone to an agency, it was Alfred Marks at the time, which became a Deco. And I went along for a day's photocopying. At the end of the day, I should come back tomorrow. And they went, yeah. And then on the Friday, she'd come back on Monday. He went, yeah. And then I just ended up being there 20 years, trained as an accountant, worked in finance. So, yeah. I mean, so I thought, leaving here is strategic, not tactical. So during COVID, they said, well, you actually can stay a bit longer if you like, because of the economic situation. I'm like, no, I'm off. So I did a research master's degree in finance and accounting immediately that I finished. In fact, I kind of dovetailed at the end, so I'd kind of started that before I actually finished, so that you kind of in flight already with the next thing. I thought that I'd be researching some of the stuff that I'd done over the years, so whether it's enterprise planning software, business intelligence software, analytics, the sorts of stuff, the kind of things that I brought into Prudential and deployed in Prudential while I'd been there. But in the 101 course of the Research Masters, it said how to choose your topic. And it said, write down things you're really interested in, because it's going to be important that you care about and you're interested in the topic to sustain your kind of your interest over the period of research, and you'll do a better job as a consequence. So I did. I followed that, and I wrote out things like mathematics. I'd done my undergrad maths originally. Finance, personal finance, IT, computer science, all these things. And I just stared at this sort of mind map, and like cryptocurrency just popped into my head. I'm like, oh, yeah, I've heard about that. I don't know anything about it, because when you're doing your regular job, you're busy with your life, you've got your kids, and you've got your full-time job. You haven't got really time to go and do the learning. So I thought, that would be really, I could learn about that, and I could do some research. So that's what I plumped in, and it quickly turned into Bitcoin after the first bits of reading books and journals. I realized that actually the important thing here was Bitcoin. that very quickly became clear. So that's how I did it. It was an academic research in 2020, which I finished in December 2020. And at the end of that, I thought, well, this is so much more than just a degree. So then in 2021, I started doing lots of the non-academic learning, reallocating more of my assets into Bitcoin, because I was suddenly worried that the things I thought were brilliant, like my defined benefit final salary pension scheme from Prudential, was basically just a bond, right? I mean, it may be index linked, but even the indexing is a lie. So when we say inflation is 2% or inflation is 4% or whatever it is, that's not really what inflation is. What inflation is the amount of money being added into the economy. So how much is my money being diluted and devalued by private banks creating debt or by the government creating debt? If you look in the long term, that's pretty much 8 or 9% per annum on average. So if you're not getting that return on your money or your investments, you're going backwards.
Yeah.
And the index linking on things like index linked bonds or defined benefit pensions is CPI or RPI. That is never at the same level as really what's happening to the money. So I suddenly realized that my defined benefit pension, which previously, apart from where I live, I'd had as like certainly the financial asset, the single biggest financial asset I had. And it was like, I'm looking at 40 years of retirement, inshallah, suddenly this thing isn't as great as I thought it was. So I'm buying more and more Bitcoin as a hedge against what most people would regard as a gold plating for one of these questions. Yeah, because it's not even government. It's not even from the government. It's not something that somebody could vote. A future government could vote NHS pensions out or down, or make people pay more or whatever. This is a private sector from a very big financial institution, and obviously as a account, I know how that all works in the background, and I know it's about as solid a pension scheme as you could possibly find. And yet, it turns out that it's not as good as I thought it was. So that's my journey into Bitcoin. And then, from 2022, I'd done lots of learning. I've been reallocating assets, and I thought, well, I'm still only 53. Maybe I should get out there and actually get involved, like physically, personally, and not just sit here on the sofa.
With your
secret
Bitcoin.
So set up went up to Rail Bedford, actually. So Bedford Football Club there's one of the biggest global Bitcoin podcasters, a Bedford lad called Peter McCormack, and he'd always had a boyhood dream of owning a football club, but he bought this 13th tier football club called Bedford, and he rebranded it Rail Bedford in 2022. And I thought, well, I'll just go up there and watch the football. Maybe there'll be some Bitcoiners around, and sure enough there were. So that was my first entry into meeting other Bitcoiners, and set up a partnership, Bridge to Bitcoin, where we onboard businesses in the UK to accept Bitcoin. Set up another business called Laserized Cards, where we manufacture tap and pay Bitcoin debit cards. And set up a charitable trust called the Sustainable Society Trust, where we hold our assets in the treasury in Bitcoin. And set up and run Berkshire Bitcoiners, which is a local meetup group. So I've just kind of gradually created a situation where I'm not retired.
Yeah, you had one job, suddenly got four.
For people out there wanting to invest in Bitcoin, where do they start? What are the sort of fundamentals that they need to do in order to start their journey in Bitcoin?
It's all about learning. So you've got to match your learning with your investment. So just punt a few £100 in there just as part of learning.
Yeah.
But if you want to become a more serious part of your asset management strategy as an individual or as a business, it's about learning. And there's so many books, podcasts, videos, films. I mean, I'll send you guys like a kind of curated list actually after this, and you can have a look at some of those just for your personal interest, but maybe put a few links in the notes as well. There's a huge amount there on the internet that's available. Almost all of it's free. There are courses, entire courses that are completely free. So I mentioned Michael Saylor before. He's the executive chairman of MicroStrategy. I mean, he's a billionaire. Or was already from that business in business intelligence software, actually. Self-made was his company, built it from the 80s onwards, floated in 98, 99 on the stock market. He set up a philanthropic charity called Saylor Academy before he got into Bitcoin, which is to spread free education across the world. It's called the SaylorAcademy.org. You can go there. There's a 12-hour course on Bitcoin. Right? So you can just go in there and do 12 hours straight for free. All sorts of books. I mean, I'd recommend things like The Bitcoin Standard. It's a fantastic book by a guy called Seyfedin Ammous, who's a Lebanese-American economics professor. There's enough to keep you occupied for the rest of your life already.
Is there anything out there that people should stay away from? Reason why I say that is you see a lot of Instagrammers, a lot of stuff on social media where people are saying certain things that potentially aren't true, or that are trying to get people to buy into something that is a scam. So I always say to people when they talk to me about crypto is that here's 4 pieces of, or 4 websites to go to, or 4 people to listen to, etc., etc., and just learn from those. Don't listen to the young Instagrammers on there saying to investing. But is there anything else to sort of stay away from?
Yeah, so I'll send you a couple of websites as well you can put in the show notes. Just rather than me give them out, just straight off the top of my head, because I want to kind of think about it a little bit and just choose exactly the best ones, particularly like this is UK, to make sure that they're kind of more UK focused. The one thing I would say on top of it is go and join a local meetup group like Berkshire Bitcoiners. And you'll find us on Twitter at Bitcoinshire, or you just find me on LinkedIn. Wherever you are in the country, there's a website you can go to called bitcoinevents.uk, and that lists all of the meetups across the country. Go and meet some real people in your local community. It doesn't matter if you don't know anything. We all love talking about Bitcoin, and we'll protect and look after anyone who comes in who wants to. They can ask all the questions. They can be given individual direction there, and so it's like anything. It's much easier to trust in a physical sense when you meet people, because we're evolved to be able to cope with that. We can tell by people's body language and the fact that they've got friends or they haven't got friends. Are they kind of solid? We're better at judging that, whereas on the internet, you just don't know who you're dealing with. So
that's the thing. I mean, there's just so much information out there.
That's what throws people out. Is it's new and it's different. It's not what you were taught during your school period.
No.
So it's very it's a very strange. Totally, we're going through this period. Obviously, Trump's just been elected. Going through this period, it's the equivalent of going from the feudal times into the industrial age. But everything changes in the next few years, where I think everybody's going to be left wondering, well, do I have a job? Do I have anything there? Which is, the equivalent to when the first tractor rolled onto a farm.
Yeah.
And every farmhand looked at it and went, uh-oh. Things evolved and moved on into industrialization, where people were working in factories, and then factories became automated, and then people were working in services, and now services are being automated, so people do something else. Don't know what that is yet. And it's the same with currency as well, that I can't remember, and we were talking about it yesterday, can't remember the last time I paid for anything in cash. And if someone gives me cash, it's really inconvenient.
That's what we were saying, wasn't it? I can't remember the last time I went to a cash point. I can't remember the last time I had coins in my pocket, notes in my wallet.
interestingly, Bitcoin has made me much more cash engaged because of the awareness of the privacy implications of our current system. So I now try to use cash as much as possible. It's more to vote for cash, if you like. Vote for the bearer asset, right? Vote against surveillance. I don't want everything to be in a database that's, centralized in banks or can be surveilled by the government institutions. It's not that I'm hiding anything. It's that I want society to still have the ability to do these kinds of face-to-face, non-surveilled transactions. It's not about avoiding tax. It's just about believing that total surveillance is bad for us. It's bad for society, and it's bad for freedom. And so Bitcoin, ironically, this completely digital cat money has, in terms of my engagement with existing money systems, pushed me more towards cash. Yeah, I mean, I still use cards a lot.
Yeah.
but it's an active thing that I do now, is to go, I haven't got any cash, right? I'll go and get 50 quid out, and then I'll find the opportunities to use it. Yeah.
Fine. Do you see any challenges for Bitcoin further on down the line, in regards to regulation or other things? And do you think the Trump effect will help Bitcoin further on down the line as well? Because Trump said that he wants the USA to be the crypto hub of the world. You've got Elon Musk with him as well, who he knows got his hands in certain things, and he's sort of a big advocate for Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, and a few others as well. Do you think that will have any effect on Bitcoin at all, or not? It's just going to sort of stay where it is till further on in 10 years, 20 years, 30 years.
Yeah. So, Trump spoke at the Bitcoin conference in Nashville back in April last year, saying, I'm going to create a strategic Bitcoin reserve, for the United States. I want all Bitcoin mining, or as much as possible, to be done in the United States. Then he was hunting for votes, right? So...
Yeah, in the last election, he did also say he was pro-guns and anti-guns at the same time. Just toning the right people using. Yeah. It's a good Facebook advert. Big fan of that in a kind of perverse way.
Yeah. So he's a fantastic sales guy, and he did get the Bitcoin and crypto community behind him. There were these PACs, these sort of groups of people that came together to fund his campaign. So he did very well with that. Will he deliver? Well, if you look at the team around him, I think you'd suggest that to some degree that might happen. Yeah. But the bigger real question is, does it all matter? And my view is it doesn't matter. It wouldn't have mattered if Biden had been re-elected or Harris had got in the medium to long term. That doesn't really matter. It can have short-term impacts on how this technology evolves. It's a bit like asking if instead of Ronald Reagan, had they had, I don't know, Walter Mondale, or I'm trying to remember back who he was fighting against in the 80s, or if George Bush hadn't come in, or if Bill Clinton hadn't come in, would the internet have been different? Would it not have happened? I mean, to me, technology is superordinate. Technology evolution and innovation sits above all of these more short-term things. They can be impeded for certain periods or in certain geographies, but in the end, the technology is what drives the future, not politicians, and not even law, and not democracy. Oddly, I'm not saying anything about. I'm not saying I'm not against democracy. I'm just saying it's not what you vote for that makes the future.
Yeah, no, I'm totally with you. That as I was just saying about 150, 200 years ago, the industrialization, that was driven by technology.
Absolutely.
The tractor was the technology, and then the factory was the technology, etc., etc. It's always the technology that drives it. And like you say, it's whether that person at the top is friendly to the technology. I guess, opens doors for it, or means it has to find its way around things.
Yeah, and that person is temporary.
So very
weird.
Especially with US presidents, because they have a very defined term and they can't re-elect. We can't have 14 years of Trump.
Mm.
Well, he'll probably try and find a way.
Yeah, he'll find a way for a third term.
But it's not like a Russian president where they can impose themselves on a population, is it? It's very fixed in that sense.
It's like the church didn't vote for the printing press. The church ran Europe, right? Basically, before the printing press, it controlled all of the information because all books were produced in these things called scriptoria, where monks would sit and they would copy out the Bible and other approved things. Those are basically the only books that existed, and they all came through the church institutions. Nobody voted in the feudal system for the printing press, and certainly not the powers that be the church, because it basically took away their total control of information and enabled other people to produce published books.
Just trump my tractor analogy.
Well, it's all the same.
From the point of view of one of our sister companies, we obviously have Soteria Planning, which is estate planning and wills and that kind of thing. The first people who own Bitcoin will start dying in a few years. I can't imagine many 87-year-olds have got Bitcoin, but obviously, it starts to filter through, doesn't it? You hear about people losing passwords, and that's I think they're the biggest thing that people worry about is holding it and having access to it. Freezing bank accounts, that and the other is quite easy. If you were to either hold Bitcoin and worry about it being a part of an inheritance, or you inherit Bitcoin, is there any problems around it? Because the whole system is 200 years old for wills and estate planning in the UK. It didn't allow for digital currency.
Well, there are technical issues. So how do I pass a secret to an heir without giving them the secret before I die? Which I may or may not want to do, depending on trust levels.
Yeah.
How do I pass that secret through a third party? Am I going to let my solicitor have
your password? Yeah, absolutely. This is where I'm at. Yeah.
So real sort of operational technical questions, and then also there's the kind of the legal questions of who owns the asset and also tax, what happens in that transaction.
Yeah, because I can walk into Barclays with the forms as an executor and say, I'm the executor of the state. Let's get this all released.
Yeah,
we've established there's no one there at Bitcoin.
Yeah, exactly.
So
Barclays can't. Yeah, nobody can help you. The government or Barclays or anybody can help you. However, there are institutions who are coming along who help to kind of intermediate this, and there is technology called multi-sig, so multi-signature wallets, where there are several secrets and you need like 2 of 3 or 3 of 5 secrets in order to unlock the Bitcoin. And so you distribute that amongst different institutions who you pay a monthly fee for their services, and then should you die, they then kick off a process that you've agreed with them that will happen. And that then they then cooperate with each other to ensure that the person who's named in the will is then able to access the Bitcoin. Yes.
So that's some kind like a digital lockbox.
Yes. Where you're paying for the services of other institutions to help
hold your password.
That kind of transition. Well, but you turn it into multiple passwords.
Yeah.
That have to cooperate. And that there are rules. You're dealing with the institution as you have a contract and they have a process, and and if you involve multiple institutions, if one goes bad or one goes bust, there's still other ways around.
Sort of thing. I don't know. I didn't know if that was a stupid question or a boring question.
No, it's very, very interesting and complex.
Because we write wills, and a lot of our clients have them stored.
Yeah.
So technically, your will is being stored somewhere. So you could store your passwords with your will, because only the executor can get, or you can get access to that will. I guess.
Yeah.
I would recommend not storing your passwords with it, but employing other companies to help you in that process.
So you would say in your will, I own a degree of Bitcoin, and the access is with
Casa or OnRamp, or there are a number of these companies that were
second step.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's something to look into, because my brother's got like a stick that's passphrased.
Yeah,
and he's put all of his on there, and only 2 people know where that stick is. Me being one of them, the other one being his wife.
Yeah.
Ever been tempted?
And what the pass? I might have to.
You will do one day.
When he goes to America with the family, I'm straight around there. But yeah, he's obviously passphrased, and you go back to hearing that story when that guy had all of that Bitcoin stored on a stick and didn't know the code, and 7 out of 8 attempts or whatever he's used.
Well, there's someone suing a council, aren't they,
in Swansea,
to try and get access to a landfill. Like, it's mental.
Yeah. But having something like that, where you've got those 3 or 5 different things, it makes more sense to have it that way.
And all of this ecosystem is just growing up around Bitcoin, and it's only going to grow further. There will be more companies. There'll be different offerings, some cheaper, some more expensive, so appropriate for individuals of different levels of wealth, with different services provided. Will writers should
have to
engage,
be involved in a way,
and start to understand the same way as
Yeah.
IFAs need to engage and understand Bitcoin as an asset. Everybody, whatever you do, whatever your main role or main job, there'll be some area of Bitcoin's evolution where you'll get touched. Not just do you hold Bitcoin on your balance sheet, not just do you accept Bitcoin as a business, but other aspects that maybe affects your market. I don't know. I run a boutique hotel business around the world. Well, there's this new group of people who are not defined by what their nationality is, or what their gender is, or what their religion is, or what their race is. They're defined by the fact that they were in Bitcoin, in before the mid-20s, right? And they're all over the world, of all ages. They're likely to be significantly richer.
That is true, right?
Maybe as a boutique hotel operator, my market,
those people,
my market demographics in 10 or 15 years might be different from what they are today. So perhaps that's going to affect how I plan and my marketing communications, or the way that I approach engaging with Bitcoin might be. Actually, if I start thinking about this now, maybe I can position myself for this emerging market early and gain something, gain an advantage on those others that don't.
Yeah. Do you think that there's anything out there currently or up and coming that can rival Bitcoin's dominance in the market?
Personally, I don't. There's an opinion. I can't know everything either, so there could be things that I don't know about, because I do spend most of my time in Bitcoin, not mostly watching other stuff. So, but from what I know and from what I'm aware of, no, I'd be extremely surprised if there were. And part of the reason for that is that Bitcoin is essentially perfect, right, from what it's trying to do. It wasn't an accident. I mean, there were 40 years of work went into creating Bitcoin. I know people think there's this person or people pseudonymously called Satoshi Nakamoto who delivered a white paper in October 2008 and coded it up and started it running on January the 3rd, 2009. Sure. But they were sitting on the shoulders of giants who'd produced a lot of the technology that Bitcoin actually uses. I mean, first of all, the internet itself. I mean, internet, it can work on ham radio and satellite broadcast and stuff, but realistically,
it's the access to everything. It's the bedrock of everything now.
Yeah. So the internet itself, cryptography, the evolution of asymmetric cryptography and elliptic curve cryptography, and the legal challenges that went on in the 1970s and 80s in America not wanting unbreakable cryptography to be in the hands of the people. So there was a big legal fight, which eventually the American state backed off fighting, but not after trying to stop it. And then there were the evolutions like how do you distribute information across the internet without central servers? So things like BitTorrent, which was 2001. So Bram Cohen developed BitTorrent, which was released in 2001. That's important because before that, there were file sharing sites, but they got taken down because they were breaching copyright and patents and everything. People sharing their videos and their songs. So they could be attacked because there was a company. But BitTorrent basically there's no attack surface. There's no company behind BitTorrent. It's just code. So that's part of how Bitcoin works. There was something released by a British computer scientist called Adam Back in 1998. Not 97, 98, maybe 97, actually 97, called Hashcash. So there've been various people trying to develop electronic monies, and they were always failing for one reason or another. But he introduced something called Hashcash, which was a way to avoid or to remove or reduce email spam, where it was a cost that you had to bear to send an email. Quite small, but it adds up if you try and spam someone. You send 100,000 emails. It's going to be expensive. So he released that in 1997. That idea of costliness in the internet environment, that's also cited in the white paper, is important to how Bitcoin works. It's what stops anyone taking over the system, is the difficulty that miners have to overcome in order to add a block or to change a historic transaction. In fact, changing historic transactions due to the way it's implemented is essentially impossible. Right, it's part of the security of Bitcoin flows from that. So, and various people, including Adam Back himself, in fact, in 2013, 2014, have undergone analysis of Bitcoin and tried to see where it could be improved. And almost all those efforts have come to the conclusion, well, pretty much it's about as perfect as it could be. So as a global, trustless, decentralized monetary solution. Yeah. It's not gonna cook your eggs, you know, but for its purpose, it's pretty much bang on. Yeah. So both from that technical kind of perspective, but also admitting that I don't know everything about things I don't know about. There's plenty of things I don't even know I don't know about. I would say that there are really no threats. There are issues that have to be overcome, that will need addressing at points in the future, but from my perspective, none of them are fundamental or foundational. So yeah, I mean, well, I'm prepared.
You put your life on the line.
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's. Yeah, I trust it more than my defined benefit pension.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Last question, I guess, is where do you see Bitcoin against the pound in 12 months? Is there a way of predicting that, or is it in the gods?
So there are a lot of.
There are a lot of models.
Yeah, I will. I'll get that. I'll get that. Oh, yeah. It's the second time you asked that. I avoided it last night. You phrased it differently, but yeah, I will. I promise. There are various models out there. A couple that come to mind. Something called the stock to flow model by a Dutch ex hedge fund manager called goes by the pseudonym of Plan B. You find him on Twitter. A group of guys, including a very well respected Italian mathematician, professor of maths, who have modelled Bitcoin as a power law model. And there's some stuff that you can find out there. If you just type in power law Bitcoin, you'll find their site, and you can look at some of the work they've done. All models are wrong, but they can give some insight some of the time. So those would be things that you could go and have a look at. My personal view is that in the short term, and that means in this year or next year, any number I give, which I will give,
we're here for it,
is not as reliable as the medium to longer term.
Absolutely.
This is
Totally
where this
agree
is
on
going.
that. Yeah.
Like it's a trend. This is where it's definitely going.
Yeah.
However, where it is today, next week, next month,
Yeah.
this year.
Yeah.
However, my estimates for this year, and I'm quite conservative, is somewhere between $150,000 and $200,000. So what's that? $120,000 to £160,000.
Yeah.
Today it's about £85,000.
Mhm.
So about doubling this year. Now 2026, it could fall because it's that one of the 4 years in each 4-year cycle of the halving
Yeah.
of Bitcoin issuance. We tend to see a kind of pullback. Now, because my estimate is on the conservative side for this year compared with many, in my mind, that pullback will be lower than it would be for some of the others who are a bit more extreme this year. So some people are talking about $500,000, $1 million this year.
This year.
This year.
It's crazy, isn't it?
Obviously,
I mean, you'd sell your house, wouldn't you? Like,
Yeah.
don't.
no, I'm not gonna sell my house.
No. You need somewhere to live. You're short housing.
I'd
You're
find somewhere.
short
I'd take the pain shorter term and live in a bush.
Yeah.
But if it does hit those levels, then there'll definitely be, in my view, a sharp pullback next year.
Yeah.
So that the more it goes crazy this year, the
You
more
see
of
the
it-
balance, and
Yeah.
it will be a pullback.
Yeah.
I mean, that's fascinating. To be honest, I'd love you to come back in 6 months' time.
I'd love to, yeah,
for an update,
really happy, yeah.
and sort of tell us more about the expansion of the point of sale. How many UK businesses have adopted it in 2025, and the usability of it as a currency. But for now, I think I've got the biggest headache since we did the trusts episode. I would say.
Yeah.
Final thanks to Mortgage Tribe for backing this episode, and we'll catch you next week on the Investors Corner.